Now we try to use the information we already have to get further information. For example, we start looking for places where there's only one spot available. For example, here, this row is all filled in except this one spot. So then that has to be an O, because in every larger box there has to be an O in every row and an O in every column. So then that allows us to put X's in the rest of that column. So that tells us something there. And then we also start with different people's information and try to read it back and forwards. So let's say we want to start with the 7-year-old. And we say that the 7-year-old, we look for an O. So let's say we look at this O here. And we know that this 7-year-old has the green backpack. And we look at it this way and we say, yes, we know that already. But then we say, okay, but what else do we know in the green column? We know that the green column can't be Eddie, Diana, and Caleb. So that means since this 7-year-old is in Mr. Bento's class, that can't be Eddie, Diana, and Caleb. But we already knew it couldn't be Bill. So then that means the 7-year-old has to be Anton. That's the only space left. So we put X's in the rest of that row. And now we know that Anton is 7 years old and he has a green backpack. So we'll put an O there because we know he has the green backpack. And X's in the rest of that column. And we know that he's 7 years old. So we put X's in that row and that column. And then going back here, we can also say, let's say we wanted to start with the 8-year-old. And we know the 8-year-old has a silver pack. And we look over here and here's the silver pack, so we know that. And we know the 8-year-old can't be Eddie, Bill, or Anton. So we put that here. The 8-year-old here can't be Eddie, Bill, or Anton. And then we could do the same thing at the 6-year-old. The 6-year-old we know has the brown backpack. So let's put it over here. He has a brown backpack, so we put an O there. And X is in the rest of that row, and X is in the rest of that column. And so now we know this, the 6-year-old is in Mr. Diaz's class, and he has the brown backpack. And from here, we know that's Eddie. So Eddie has to be in Mr. Diaz's class. So we put X's in the rest of that row, and X's in the rest of that column. And we know that Eddie has to be the 6-year-old, so we can go in this direction as well. And Eddie's 6, and he's X is in the rest of that column, which then tells us that Caleb is 8. So if Caleb is 8, what else do we know about the 8-year-old? If we go to the 8-year-old, we know that the 8-year-old has a silver pack. And the 8-year-old is in Miss Ng's class, so Caleb must be in Miss Ng's class because he's the 8-year-old. And we know he has to have the silver pack. So when we put that O here, we put the O here, we put X's in the rest of that row and column. And X is in the rest of this row and column. And that tells us that Diana has to have the purple backpack, and Diana's 10, so we put an O here, and X is in the rest of that row and column, which tells us that the 9-year-old has the yellow backpack. When we look at the 9-year-old, we can go back up here. Who do we know is the 9-year-old? Well, we know that's Bill. So the 9-year-old has the yellow backpack. And we know that the 9-year-old is Bill. And we know that the 9-year-old could only be in one of either Ms. Abbott or Mr. Bento's class. So we have a little more work to do to figure out who's got this backpack. So what we do then, let's say we want to go to the 10-year-old. And we know that this has to be the 10-year-old because it's only the one spot left. So the 10-year-old is, we already knew was Diana. And the 10-year-old is in Miss Abbott's class. So we're going to add that here. And X is in the rest of that row and column. And Diana has the purple backpack. So we'll add that in this direction. X is in the rest of that row and the rest of that column. That tells us the yellow backpack is in Ms. Cott's class, and that has to be Bill. So, and he is the 9-year-old. So we fill that in. So now we have everything figured out. And since the yellow backpack has the phone that took the offensive pictures, they need to run right over to Miss Cott's class and get that yellow backpack.